Do you hear me? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation to this very interesting forum, International Transport Innovation Forum, but I'm from International Transport Forum. I think your forum is better than my forum because you have innovation in the title already. So basically, I will briefly talk about International Transport Forum. Lithuania is one of our valued members. We have now 63 member countries from around the world. But basically, we started from European context. So our founding fathers were the ministers of ECMT. I think you all know that European Conference of Ministers of Transport. And we have currently ECMT multilateral quota on the surface transportation sector, which is quite complicated and difficult, but it's still working. And please know that ITF is the only global body with a mandate for all modes of transport. You have IMO in the maritime sector, and you have also ICAO in the aviation sector, but ITF is dealing with multimodalism, combining all modes of transport on the forum. We are not UN agencies. UN agencies, they make some regulations and they adopt resolutions which have a great impact on policy making the process in member countries. But ITF is activating discussions on different topics. So we are more liberal, we are more open-minded and flexible. And we produce almost more than 60 reports every year. So every report is freely downloadable from our website. Every individual can have a free access. And in a PDF format, you can download it. And we organize annual summit always in May. And so far, since the creation of ITF in 2006, our first summit took place in 2008 in Germany, in Leipzig. And it was written in our general rules that always the summit takes place in Germany, so we cannot change it. And so, but unfortunately this year we went virtual, and last year we could not hold this meeting. And all the ministers of transport from around the world gather in Leipzig to discuss very interesting topics. And Lithuania is one of the active the participants in this forum. And Minister Marius promised to come to Leipzig next year. So I'm looking forward to seeing him in person next year in Leipzig. And we also invite non-ITF members. So it'll be a very interesting event. We publish some flagship reports. One of them is ITF Transport Outlook. We publish it every 2 years. So latest version was the version of 2021. So we launched it in last May, and we predict the situation in the mobility sector until 2050. Of course, it's prediction. So prediction can change. And as of today, we currently evaluate our future, considering all the different factors in our life. And according to our projection, definitely in 2050, there will be more demand on passenger side and freight side, but it can change depending on how we do. So it's just for the basic, the direction where we are going. And if you download it also, the research paper, you can have more detailed analysis of the future. And freight accounts for more than 40% of the transport emissions when you talk about CO2 emissions these days, because climate change is a hot topic today, strongly supported by European Commission and also global community. And road transport is responsible for 55% of freight emissions, so still the road. But in the maritime sector also more than maritime sector also contributes a lot of CO2 emissions in the transport mobility sector, because it's one of the hard-to-abate sectors in CO2 reduction, emission reduction today. So, and also freight CO2 emissions will rise 22% from 2015 to 2050 if we maintain a current rhythm of recovery scenario. But if we do more special measures, then we can radically reduce the CO2 reductions in 2050. So it gives us a little bit of hope, but we will see. But on the way to our final goal, we know that this is a quite complicated and difficult, the reality. And main takeaways, several main takeaways. So we have to scale up ready to adopt freight decarbonization measures quickly. And also we have to align price incentives with freight decarbonization ambitions. And to reach climate targets, freight transport must achieve the transition to low or zero carbon energy sources. So COVID-19 stimulus packages play a critical role. That's kind of principles that we can take today. So now let's have a much broader perspective. I will briefly talk about the evolution of transport. So in the past, we all know that we focused on vehicle and ship and plane. When we talk about transport, we immediately imagine that specific the tools for transportation. But nowadays, we usually use our cell phone to make our planning for transportation, and when you want to take some public transport, and we consult immediately the real-time information that we can find on our cell phone or on our website. So now, today it's becoming a multimodal and intermodal. We try to combine different modes of transport. And in the past, the government and public sector usually provided transport services. So once you have this bus route, either you take it or not, it's up to you. But today you can create your own route with your colleagues through the platform, the cyber platform, which is a cell phone also. And one day I imagine that we talk about autonomous vehicle, but I think autonomous vehicle will be like cell phone. So in that autonomous vehicle, we can enjoy movies, even drink and talking to people and sleep and work and so on and so on. So there is a controversy. If we develop autonomous vehicle, demand for passenger, personal private car will go up or go down. We don't know, because it's like a private space where we can really enjoy our life. So let's see what will be like in the future. And also the hardware was highlighted in the past, but nowadays we basically focus on software. And transport was transport. So it's a siloed approach, but nowadays we know that there are so many different dimensions attached to the transport sector. So we know gender issues, we know social segregation issues, we know connectivity issues. Passing through the COVID-19, now we know that tourism is very important, but without transport, tourism cannot be revived, and economic boost cannot be done. So now we know the value of transport more than before. So I go further. So 5 focus areas of today in ITF and the global community, and we can summarize as what you see on the screen, is the digitalization and connectivity and decarbonization and safety and security in health and universal access, inclusion, and health. I put health twice because of the COVID-19. And in the universal access section, we also have some issue on gender, because I was in Milano a few days ago to participate in a women's forum. And some people ask the question, what is the relationship between gender and transport? And what is the relationship between women and transport? There is a strong relationship, because in terms of employment, I come from the government. I was working in the Ministry of Infrastructure in Korean government. And I had no female colleagues in the higher decision-making level. So basically, I was very biased when I designed the infrastructure, and I was introducing some measures for transport regulations and so on and so on. I was not really aware of the specific need of women. But knowing that half of the population, half of the situation are women, our mother, sister, daughters, and they also have the right to enjoy the excellent transport services. So basically, unless we have a certain level of the female participation in the decision-making procedure, basically we cannot really make a long-term sustainable transport infrastructure. Once you decide to invest for infrastructure, it's not for 1 year and 2 years, it's for several decades. It's not really easy to change in the end. And also health is issue important. Public transport is good, and transport people usually say, instead of using your private car, please use your public transport, but on the condition that public transport should be credible and clean and sanitarily safe. For example, when I was leaving for Milano from Paris, I live in Paris, every morning I have to check if our metro system is working properly. Unpredictably, last Saturday and Sunday, there was construction work, and I could not reach the Charles de Gaulle airport. So I took my private car. My wife drove me to the airport. So it was unexpected, in fact. And in the city of Milano, when I arrived, I was trying to use the metro because I usually take the public transport. And suddenly, metro stopped, and I had to walk, more than 1 kilometer with my luggage. So, to make our public transport, credible, and we have to make it perfect and more convenient and comfortable to use. But we talk about innovation and revolutions, but we also know that there are a lot of disruptions on the way to that perfection. So several speakers already talked about our future, and it was fantastic. It was like watching 007 movies, because in the 70s and 80s, we fantasized and we were fascinated by the new weapons that James Bond used in the movies. But as a person with government background, I immediately think about the procedural things and how we get there. I can easily imagine that there might be some conflicts and some difficulties, and how we can move people, how we can convince people, how we can get funding, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So for me, it's kind of professional disease to think about these things that are not visible in general. But we have to also know that the procedural things, and this is really difficult to manage. And especially transport today is more linked to other sectors, as I mentioned. So in summary, intermodal platform, we have some potentials regarding transport today, the linking transport to other sectors, and more choices for consumers, and economy of time and money, of course, and less pollution if we decarbonize transport sector. But also challenges still exist, meeting the sustainable development goals and cybersecurity issues. As we are connected more, we are more exposed to the threat. And gender issues, and regulation issues, and financing maintenance. Construction is good, but how to maintain that is also an issue. And governance system. Central government cannot make everything happen. So we have to talk to the local government and a lot of stakeholders in the private sectors. So finally, what we can do on an international level, there are some discussions and research going on, and at the same time, there are rule-making going on. So I think we have to harmonize those two different elements. And perhaps we have to go beyond the transport, because now we know that we need money, and we need also the regional support, and also support from other sectors. So ITF, for example, we try to set up excellent network and cooperation opportunities with these organizations from around the world. Sometimes we do some overlapping work, but nowadays I think all the global community is quite nicely cooperating with each other. So for example, trade, energy, and tourism, and urbanism, and environment, those are especially important sector to remember. So these are my final the chart, because I have 40 seconds. And in ITF, even though we are an intergovernmental body, we have a special board where 31 private companies stay on the platform of ITF to interact with policymakers. So as you see, we have a very different profiles. Some companies are energy companies. Some company, AutoCrypt is a cyber security company about autonomous vehicle. And Michelin and Kakao Mobility. Michelin is tire, but Kakao Mobility is a kind of micro mobility and shared mobility and so on, and all the other vehicle manufacturing companies. But we don't have any company from Lithuania yet. So if some companies want to join, I think they can be welcomed, and they can be also invited to our summit in Leipzig to interact with the policymakers from different countries. So if you are interested, you can write us, and we will send you the information. So this kind of public-private discussions and interaction should take place somewhere in the world to talk about the real problems. Because I have to confess that when I was working in the government, I could not know everything happening on site. I always refer to my colleagues from academia and working in construction companies and mobility companies and so on. So we have to be honest, saying that we have to learn from each other, and that's the spirit of the creation of this board. So in the interest of time, I cannot go into more details, but I think I delivered some basic information about where we are and what we can do in the future. But if you have some questions, you can write us. And we have 60 staff in ITF. We are based in OECD in Paris. So we'll be happy to answer any questions, and we welcome you. Thank you very much.
Gal mes turim klausimų iš salės ir mes čia galėtumėm greitai duoti atsakymą. I just ask maybe have some questions from the stage. Actually, I have, because like you told at the beginning, Transporto inovacijų forumas like TIF, it's something very similar what you are doing. In 67 countries you have participants. We would like to involve more businesses in our association too. How looks this participation? Could you shortly explain us how you are working together with business and with governments in different countries?
It's very simple. In fact, for example, I will compare OECD and ITF. Some people think that ITF is a part of OECD, but that's not true. OECD is OECD and ITF.
But it's participant.
Yeah. But OECD has 38 members and ITF has 63 members. And OECD requires more formal agreement, but ITF requires just a letter of intention to join the ITF.
Who makes strategy?
In the case of government, it's a minister. In the case of a private company, it's the CEO of the company who writes me, and we circulate it to our existing members. If there is no objection, it's done. Very simple.
Thank you very much. Turim klausimų? Neturim. So, thank you very much. Daktaras Jangas.